And I just kind of shared my personal experience on developing healthy habits in your life. And he loved it so much, he forwarded it to his entire staff. And we had like 3 or 4 teachers come in within the next couple of weeks. And it was then that I realized the power of sharing good content.
Hey, my name is Damien. I'm here with Dr. Dane Donohue at 8 Weeks of Wellness, and he's going to talk a little bit about the success that he's had with the newsletters he's been writing since COVID and kind of the impact that it's had on his practice. So, Dr. Dane, how have those newsletters and the stuff that you've been doing with your blog affected your practice?
Yeah, I would say the first thing, like when you say the word newsletter, I think boring, it's like newsletter, great. But what it really is, guys, is getting valuable content to your audience. And one thing that I've learned, my 31 years practice is out of sight, out of mind. I know when patients don't have an appointment in my practice, they're not thinking about me. When patients don't have pain and have that cue, like, hey, I should be get adjusted because my neck hurts, my back hurts, I need an adjustment, they're probably not going to show up in your office. So, you've got to create content because you've got to be in front of your patients on a regular basis. Okay. And interestingly enough, Damien, this started for me right when COVID started. A lot of patients didn't know we were open because everywhere else was closed down. And I'm like, gosh, man, there's so much fear going around. There's so much misinformation going around. I've got to stay in touch with my patients, and I feel like I have this flock of sheep and I'm like the shepherd, right? I've got to shepherd my flock to make sure that they're not like doing crazy stuff and they're getting good content. So I said, the thing I can do is I can send them content through Facebook, I have a lot of my patients on my business Facebook page. And to be honest, a lot of my patients are personal friends with me on my personal page as well. So, and then also, obviously, we have an email database system. We use Wix, and through Wix, we can email our patients pretty easily. And I can also do a blog. So I started doing all that. We started posting on Facebook. I started posting my blog. If you go to my website, Damien, www.wscenters.com, and you click on the blog, I dare you to find a month where I haven't posted every 2 weeks. And this is content that I created every 2 weeks since COVID started. I dare you to find one, and it's every other week, but 1 week that I've skipped a blog or, once every 2 weeks. That's how powerful this has become. And, I'll never forget, this was probably like 6 months ago. I had a patient come in and he's a teacher and he's the head lacrosse coach at a very, very high level Catholic school in our area. And they have an amazing lacrosse program, and Bill's the head coach. And he actually has a podcast that I've been on. So he's like national. He was coach of the U.S. Olympic lacrosse team, really high level guy. And he came in and I forget what the blog was, but it had something to do with, where does motivation and habits come from, and I just kind of shared my personal experience on developing healthy habits in your life. And he loved it so much, he forwarded it to his entire staff. And we had like 3 or 4 teachers come in within the next couple of weeks. And it was then that I realized the power of sharing good content. Not everybody's going to read your content, but when you have an interesting subject line and it rings the bell for somebody, says, man, I have this, or man, I'm dealing with this, or man, this has come at the right time. They're going to open it up and they're going to read your content.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that does sound like a lot of work.
Yeah.
So what do you recommend in order to kind of make it easier, or how do you come up with ideas? And then we can talk about a little bit like what we've done to kind of repurpose yours as well. But what's your strategy like for like?
Well, like when you say work, like again, like I'm just innately, when you say work, I don't think of it that way, because, they always say, if you enjoy what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And I actually I'm a reader, right? I get up every morning, Damien, and I'm reading. I do my meditation. I read. I can go over to my reading area. I have a recliner. I have 5 books there right now that I'm reading. I don't read them all at the same time, but I pick one based on where I am that day. And so I get so many good ideas. I have these little tabs that sit right by all my books, these little tabs, and I write on them and I tab in my books. So when I get to a topic or some content that I'm reading, like I'm reading a book right now by James Clear called Atomic Habits, and it's awesome, right up my alley on, where habits come from in your life. And there was yesterday I was reading and there was just a great idea I had for a blog. And I just wrote blog and I tabbed the book. And tomorrow when every single Wednesday, and that's why it's got to be a habit. Every Wednesday, generally, I get up at 5, generally somewhere between 5 and 6:30, I'm writing my blog. And it comes from ideas that happen as I'm reading, things that happen in my office, things that happen in my life, things that happen when I go to seminar and I'm taking notes, right? I have a notebook that this thing should be stapled to my butt because it's with me all the time. And I'm always writing ideas because I'm always thinking about, I've got to provide good content. People aren't going to read shitty content. They're just not. And if they see that it's boilerplated, like created by somebody, they're not going to read it. But when they're ideas that come from you, or at least, they're edited by you, people are going to read it because they're going to know that's Dr. Dane, talking, or, that's Damien talking. And so I would just say, the idea is, if you look at it as work, it'll be work. But, if you're not learning and growing in your practice, you're just not going to be successful in practice. People want to come, they want to see leaders. They want to be led by people that are powerful people that have answers to the problems that they're looking to solve.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Wow. So in terms of like the ROI, then you said that you get a lot of referrals. Is there anything else that's?
Yeah. I mean, there's not a week that goes by than when I send out. So what happens is, like, again, I think this needs to become a system in your life. So one Wednesday morning, I write and edit the blog, and I always try to keep it to one typed page. Right. I used to write a lot of content because I can drone on about things. Right. And I said, this is too long. I had to keep it to one type page. So I keep it to one type page. I have Shutterstock where I can get images. So I always think images and videos are really good to put into those blogs. So I always try to insert a really cool image relating to the blog I wrote about, or a video. And then the next week, I then take it and then I post it to all of the platforms, or my staff does, right? So we post it to our Facebook page. We email the blog out, so we can create the blog within Wix, and then we have an option then email to our database, which we have our patient base in our database. And the cool thing about it is, not a time when I send out an email that I'll have at least 4 or 5 people call that Wednesday, because it always goes out the Wednesday morning. And when we get to the office that morning, we have 4 or 5 calls of people that want to get in that haven't been in for a while. You know why? Because they get my email and they think, oh, I haven't seen Dr. Dane in a while, I got to make an appointment. So it's not just great content that your patients will then forward those, because we have at the bottom, please share this information with someone who you think could benefit from it. So it gets them to think, oh, my Aunt Mary is suffering with this, or, my wife could really benefit from this content, and they forward it. So you'll have people that forward the content to people that they know within their circle of influence that could use that information. And then the other thing is, it's also kind of like a little bit of a recall, because you're constantly staying in front of those people. And again, out of sight, out of mind. But when they see your email with your name, you think, gosh, man, I need to get in for an adjustment, or I haven't been in. We had a husband and wife come in last week, and actually my associates did their new patient exam, reported findings, but I saw them last night, and I haven't seen these people, Damien, in probably 8 years. And he's a principal at our local high school, principal, right? So he's a person of influence, I would say. And him and his wife were in last night, and I'm like, hey, Steve, it's so great to see you. He's like, yeah, I'm principal now of Neshaminy High School. I'm like, that's awesome. He's like, yeah, I got your email last week, and he's like, man, it was time for my wife and I to get back in.
It's amazing, and it's more of a value add, where it's not your like reactivations. You might send a text like, hey, you want to come back into the office? It's nothing like that. It's more of like, provide value consistently, and then stay top of mind, and you're building your influence, as well as like you said, staying top of mind and getting more people, even if they're not coming in, you're still having an impact on their life, and still having like people see the newsletters, and they'll be able to maybe change their diet even if they're not coming in. So
yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is, Damien, we live in an effed up world. We know that as chiropractors. I was walking my dog this morning, and we have a guy. We have a lot of big pharmaceutical companies in the area I live, and one of them is Merck. And we have a high level scientist that lives across the way from us. And when my wife and I walk our dog almost every morning. Well, him and his wife walk their dog the same time every morning. And they have 2 dogs, and they have this yellow this pointer. And I'm like, where's Ollie? And they said Ollie died, right? It's a 1-year-old dog. Okay. died, and this dog was vaccinated to the hill, because we stop and we talk, and they're always like, did you get your vaccine? Like when COVID was going on, they're always pushing the vaccines on us, right? And finally I'm like, hey dude, that's not me, I don't do that stuff. Well, their dog was vaccinated out the wazoo, I mean, for every vaccine you can imagine, and this dog was running for a ball and dropped dead of a heart attack. 1 year old, most beautiful dog. And nobody's going to convince me that wasn't because this guy probably had this dog pumped full of vaccines that this happened, because the same thing's happening to humans. We take it for granted and we think, oh, this is, what can I get out of this newsletter? And the fact of the matter is, guys, it's not what you get out of it, it's what you give. And what you give is your knowledge, because people are effed up and they're living effed up lives because of the information that they've gotten their whole life, right? So the goal is get good content out to people, teach them the way you live your life, teach them the things that you know. And I guarantee you, not everybody, but a small portion of the people are going to latch on to the information and say, man, this guy knows what he's freaking, or this gal knows what he's talking about.
Definitely. Yeah. So what we've done is we're taking Dr. Dane's newsletters, blog, the content that he's putting out, and we've put it on this platform that we have. It's called Contente. And what you can, it basically allows you to, and you can see the wellness blog here. So basically it'll allow you to repurpose Dr. Dane's content very easily. And so you can basically go in and click on one of the articles, one of the blog posts that you'd like to send out to your patient base. You can edit a couple words and send it out directly to your community with the click of a button right from the platform. So there's no need to even have another newsletter that you're doing, or even like a MailChimp or something like that. It goes out right through the platform, and you'll be able to just stay consistent, because like Dr. Dane said, he hasn't missed a 2-week period since the beginning of COVID, right? Because you've seen just the impact that it's been having. So
this was one of my, by the way, Damien, this was one of my team members, one of my CAs, that she loved our blog so much. She's like, hey, could I write one of those blogs? And she wrote the coolest blog, and she's actually a pretty good writer. And she wrote this really, really cool blog. So it's like, there's just so much content out there, and you can actually have your team members and your staff write on what they're passionate about.
Definitely. Yeah, it's awesome. So yeah, click the link below, sign up. We have a 30-day free trial, just so you can test it out, and I'm sure you'll love it. And like, just be consistent with it, like Dr. Dane said, and you will see the ROI, and I'm sure you're going to want to stick with it. But Dr. Dane, any last closing thoughts before we hop off here?
No, I mean, it's amazing, because most docs I see when I go to their websites, Damien, they have a blog or they have a newsletter, but they haven't updated in like 3 years, So like, if I'm a patient and I'm going to your website and I go, oh, blog, I click on it, and the blog is like from 3 years ago, what do I think as a patient? I think, oh, this guy doesn't really keep current with his content, So again, this has just been a powerful tool. And again, I think, the motivation is, again, not what you're going to get out of it. I promise you're going to get reactivations and new patients, but it's going to force you to do a lot more reading and a lot more writing. I wouldn't say, thank God for Grammarly, Damien, because if it wasn't for Grammarly, I'd be sunk. I'm not the best writer in the world, but by writing consistently, I actually enjoy writing now. I love actually writing, and my wife's a school teacher. She was a school teacher. She runs my practice now, but she reads my content and says, Dane, that was really good. And by the way, there wasn't that many spelling errors this time, So I think it's going to make you a better doctor just by consuming more content and becoming a better writer. And doctor means teacher, right? I mean, we all know that in Latin, doctor means teacher, but are you teaching your patients?
Definitely. Sounds great. So yeah, click the link below, and we'll see you in the platform.